Casual Birder podcast, a weekly podcast for people interested in the birds they find around them. I'm Susie Buttress. While visiting Los Angeles recently, I was delighted to speak with Carrie Poppy about this week's featured bird, the feral pigeon or rock dove. Carrie is co-host of the hit podcast Oh No, Ross and Carrie. As well as listening to her podcast, I follow Carrie on Instagram and have enjoyed seeing the photos she's shared of the pigeons that nest on her balcony. Before we hear from Carrie, here are a few facts about rock doves and feral pigeons. I'm sure you've all seen feral pigeons at some point. They're found in most city centres around the world, and as such they must be considered one of the most adaptable species. The rock dove is the ancestor of all feral pigeons. They are the same species, but live in totally different environments. Rock doves are native to Europe and northern Africa. They live on sea cliffs, and it's thought there's only a few truly wild populations left, and these will be found on the north and west coasts of Scotland, the islands, and the coast of Northern Ireland. In those areas they can be seen flying around as a flock, or sometimes in pairs. As they are hunted by birds such as peregrine falcons, flying in a flock gives greater protection. Rock doves were domesticated for food, racing and competitions. Some of these birds escaped and eventually ended up living in our cities. They live in large flocks and the density of the populations can cause problems. As rock doves and feral pigeons are the same bird, they have the same characteristics. They are dumpy with slender necks and small heads. The plumage of wild rock doves is predominantly grey. They have a prominent pale-coloured cere where the beak joins the head. Heads and tails are a darker grey, wings and back paler. There are two prominent black wing bars which form a cross when the wings are closed, and the neck feathers show a purple and green iridescence. The feet and legs are red. Feral pigeons, having been selectively bred, show a massive variation in their plumage. Colours can range from blues, greys, white, through to cinnamon. They make a soft coo which gets more insistent when trying to impress. It's a little difficult to describe, so here's a recording I made in London a few weeks ago. The male pigeon was dancing circles around each of the potential mates, but unfortunately for him, none of them were interested. The courtship dances are quite flamboyant. The males will bow low, strut and turn circles to impress the hoped-for mate. Pigeons have a long breeding season and can lay several clutches of eggs each season. Both the wild and feral populations of birds eat seeds and grasses and mainly forage on the ground. The city pigeons are opportunistic and will also eat junk food. As I've mentioned, Carrie is a big fan of pigeons, and I was looking forward to meeting her and perhaps seeing the latest pigeon that's nesting on her balcony. Carrie, thank you so much for joining me on the Casual Birder podcast.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
I know that you like pigeons.
Yes.
And it may not come as a surprise to you that there are a lot of people that have very strong feelings, perhaps one way or the other, on pigeons. Mm-hmm. And as you are so keen on them, I thought it would be really nice to speak to you to get the sort of to get you to advocate for pigeons.
Yeah, you hear about them being the rats of the air. People always think they carry disease more than other birds, which I don't know why they'd carry them more than other birds. Here's what I really think it is. I think it's that there's so many of them. I think it's a scarcity thing because they used to be like the hallowed bird of the gods, that people bred because they were so beautiful. But then all of a sudden we had a whole bunch of them and now it's like, oh, they're weeds. They just grow everywhere.
So you've touched there on quite a few of the issues that I'd like to speak about. But first of all, I'd like to get a little bit of background about how you started to be interested in the natural world and birds in particular.
Sure. So when I was a kid, I loved animals. I still do, have my whole life. I think like most people, I more gravitated toward mammals because they felt more like me. And I remember thinking like, oh, people who bird watch, like that's weird. They're, it's such an unapproachable animal. Might as well be a fish. I don't understand them. And then I worked at an animal sanctuary called Farm Sanctuary for a couple of years, and they had chickens and turkeys. And they were so fun, and they had their own personalities, and they loved getting scratches, and I started having my favorite chicken and my favorite turkey, and then I was like, oh, okay, birds are pretty cool. But I still wasn't into flighted birds. I was into these big, fat birds that'll sit in your lap. But then I moved here in with my boyfriend, Drew, and he had this big balcony, and we decided to plant plants on it, and then the birds just started coming. And then I thought, oh my gosh, it's just like a mammal that comes right at you. Like it's an animal who just appears in front of you. And all of a sudden the idea of flight became amazing. So yeah, that pigeon showed up the most. We get a few songbirds, but I guess just like since pigeons were the ones that caught me, they're the ones I still love.
So how long have you been having pigeons coming to the balcony?
Now it's been, I moved in like January or February 2016. So a couple of years. Yeah, 2.5-ish years.
And you've had them breeding and having babies on your balcony. So is this the first brood that you've had, or have you had previous ones?
We've had 2 hatchings. Yeah. So one was last year. It was while Ross and I were at the UFO conference. So I think that was last year. And they were born on Easter, so we called them Easter and Ostara. And they both fledged and flew away, and I think they come back here, but it's hard to tell them all apart. But I think this is their home base. And then now we have another little baby, and her brother or sister didn't make it past the egg stage.
It is quite sad when you're very close to a nest and know what's happening. We've got a nest box camera, and
oh, cool.
Yeah, so we've had blue tits and great tits, which are like small seed-eating bird. But they take readily to nest boxes, and with the camera it's great because you can watch the nest develop. What that also does though is give you a real insight into how many nests don't make it.
Yeah.
And unfortunately this year we had 10 eggs, 7 of them hatched. And
okay.
But I was only watching every week because I've watched in previous years where I watch every day, and you really get invested in the nest. And it's great when everything is successful and they fledge. And this year I went back after a week, and none of them had made it. And but there'd been another nest that I'd been following on Instagram up in Edinburgh, and they had the same thing. And we had a patch of really warm weather, and we wonder whether that was that. Sorry to bring the mood down, but it's absolutely wonderful when they make it, and we've had nests that do, and to watch them grow, they grow so quickly,
so fast.
So when was your baby born?
So we think that it was about 2 weeks ago now. The mother was a very ferocious mom for the first week or so. So I had seen her in there, and I thought she was still just on the eggs. And then one day she was moving around a ton, and I looked under her and I was like, oh my gosh, the baby hatched and is kind of big. So she had just been keeping the baby warm for, I'm guessing, a few days. So now I would guess that baby's 2 weeks to maybe 16 or 17 days.
And it's already got feathers. Yeah, I mean, it looks like a small pigeon.
Yeah. It only takes them 30 days from hatching to fledging.
So you sound like you've done some reading on pigeons.
I've read the Wikipedia. I've been reading up on them. I mean, basically as needed. So when I'm like, what should I feed them? Then I'll look that up. And then, why are there only 2 eggs? Are there always 2 eggs? Look that up. So I've kind of been piecemeal filling in my pigeon education.
And I thought I'd heard that pigeons don't only breed at set times of year, but can breed at any time. Is that something you've noticed?
Here, at least, it's pretty much just the spring that we've seen the eggs.
Okay.
I don't know if that's true worldwide.
Yeah, so it's something I'd heard, but I hadn't checked Wikipedia, so I don't know for sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I was looking in my Sibley Guide to Birds recently and looking at the pigeons, and it did say for the rock doves, like, oh, you'll see the adolescence in February to November. So that would make me think, okay, then there is at least a breeding cycle, a typical one.
And possibly that they can breed a couple of times during the season, so maybe that's the thing.
Yeah, maybe that's it.
Now, you mentioned there about rock doves, and of course the feral pigeons that we see in cities are descended from rock doves. Is there anything that you can tell me about what you know about rock doves and how they've sort of descended into being the feral pigeons that we see?
Well, if you look at a picture of a pigeon, if you had someone draw a pigeon, they're going to draw you the feral pigeon, who is like basically the rock dove. I've got these stuffed animals in front of me. They're the typical gray pigeon with the darker head, maybe purple and green around the neck, and then the banded wings at the end. But there are a whole bunch of different breeds, species, I don't know, of pigeon. What are they, breeds or species?
I would call them species.
Species?
I guess.
Okay.
Actually, no, I'm not even sure
Yeah,
species is right.
I don't know, because I don't know if they could
be
probably
family groups.
mate, I would think.
Well, I'm not so sure about the larger ones. So
Yeah.
we have in the UK wood pigeons, which are much bigger. And I think I saw something similar to that on that page you had there. So I don't think you have wood pigeons here, but you must have a larger pigeon. What's that on the right-hand side? Is that just...
Here we've got red-billed pigeon.
Oh, the band-tailed pigeon I was looking at.
Oh, this one, yeah.
Yeah, so that is similar to, in look, our wood pigeon.
Okay.
Much bulkier, and I wouldn't think that they could mate with a feral pigeon.
Well, I feel like I've heard of pigeons and doves mating. So I would think that all of these guys are just technically breeds, but who knows? I also know that the usual definition we give of species is can reproduce and produce viable offspring. And now scientists are like, that's not really the species barrier. So who knows?
Right. But one of the things that rock doves have become over the years is domesticated and used for things like racing and also for showing. And there's an absolute wonderful variety of plumages. So although you mentioned there the sort of standard pigeon colouring, not all the pigeons that we see in the cities will have those. They won't all have the crossed wing stripes, which is obviously a very indicative of a rock dove pattern. And then sometimes they will have mottled colouring or white or...
Yeah,
so what
or
colour
pied.
Pied. What colour are the ones that are the parents of the ones on your balcony?
Oh, they look exactly like the standard pale gray, 2 black bars pigeon. Yeah. I've seen a lot of the time like one that looks like that standard pigeon everyone's picturing right now, and then the mate will be either darker or checkered or something, and I thought like, okay, one's the male and one's the female, and then I looked it up and nope, you can't sex them by
the plumage.
Yeah. So I don't know, maybe they just like variety, opposites attract. I don't know.
Can you recall any birds in your childhood? Any memories of birds that you saw then?
Yeah, so I was thinking about this earlier today. Like, what's my earliest memory of a bird? And I started remembering other people's memories. Like, oh, I've heard about someone being attacked by a goose, or was that me? You know, and trying to paw through these memories. So clearly birds weren't active in my childhood, or I would remember whether they happened to me. But what I do remember is that my parents would take me to San Diego to go to the beach, and I always wanted to stay in the hotel because there were these ducks there who, were very friendly and were used to all the hotel guests giving them bread, which I'm sure was not good for them. But they loved it. So there was just these fat, waddling mallard ducks who would come up like right to me and take food. And so I just wanted to stay and feed them.
Yeah, I have to say the whole feeding by hand of birds, that melts my heart.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't know if you've fed any other birds by hand.
Well, the ones at the sanctuary.
Okay.
For sure. Turkeys especially, once they know that humans are safe, which is already a hill to climb. But once they're there, they're super, super friendly, and they love things like squash and cranberries. Thanksgiving starts to become very ironic for you.
Oh, yes.
Because those are like their favorite foods. So, yeah, so I would often come up to them with things in my hand. I haven't gotten the pigeons to eat out of my hand yet, but I watched this YouTube of this gentleman in India who feeds his pigeons, and he said, it takes months and months of you just sitting there with your hand outstretched, and I guess I just haven't had the patience yet.
There's pros and cons to that. People worry that, you can make birds too habituated. So then well, there's the dependency, and there's also the being habitually around humans, and that may not be in their best interest.
Right. Some healthy fear would be good.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's really hard to weigh that up, and it's such a wonderful experience to have them.
Have you been to, what's it called? In Italy, Venice.
I haven't, no.
Okay, because they have a bunch of feral pigeons and doves, and a whole economy of people who hand out different things to feed them. And so the birds there just love humans and will land all over you.
Oh, right. So it's encouraged or allowed there, because in a lot of places they actively discourage feeding the birds because, as you said earlier as well, about the large numbers, that can be quite... I don't think pigeons are necessarily aggressive, but what they are is enthusiastic.
Yeah, that's a good word.
And so, if you hold your hand out, I've done this in Hyde Park, trying to feed the parakeets. And I took some other podcasters out for a bird walk in Hyde Park earlier this year, and was helping the children to feed the parakeets and trying to not have your hand swamped with pigeons. Because, but then you feel guilty because, you shouldn't
not less special.
Absolutely. They all equally deserve our attention. One thing I wanted to ask you is, had you noticed any of the breeding behaviours amongst the birds that come to your balcony?
Well, I've certainly seen them do it.
So I wasn't kind of asking exactly about the act, but I was thinking more about the courtship is what I was thinking of. Sorry, yes. Have you?
Well, I know that there's a behavior that I had seen that I didn't realize until later was like sort of a mate thing where the females will peck at the male's beaks. To say like, feed me like a little baby. and then if the male has in return chosen that female, then he lets her and her alone eat from his mouth. Right. So I've seen that quite a bit.
Have you seen any of the sort of strutting and the display behaviours that the pigeons do?
I'm not sure, but partly because I'm not sure that I could differentiate it from them puffing themselves up, out of protecting themselves from me, because they see me and they're kind of halfway between being scared and also being like, but I think this is the lady with the seeds. So they do puff themselves up and sort of display for me, and I don't think they're trying to get me as a mate. So I'm not sure I could tell the two apart. Right.
I noticed a couple of pigeons in Hyde Park. I was there just recently. I keep going up there. And with a very ornate strutting, sort of pirouetting and obviously cooing a lot, or sort of making a deep throaty coo, and definitely trying to get the attention of one of the other birds. You also mentioned that you've got food out there. I noticed black thistle seed, I think you call it here. It's
black
like Niger seed. Yeah, so the very small...
Oh, yes, yeah, we call it Niger seed.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I wasn't sure if it was the same name. So do you get goldfinches or anything like that coming to your balcony?
Okay, so there are these little songbirds that come, and we forever called them finches. And then one day I was like, are those sparrows? I still don't know. So we either get finches or sparrows all the time, and they really like those.
What kind of colour are they?
They're usually brownish. Sometimes they have a red crest on their breast.
A red patch, you mean?
Yeah, but not always.
Okay, and do they, those ones with the red patch on the chest, do they have red on the head as well?
I don't think so, but possibly.
It's like I'm just narrowing down in my head what they might be. So.
Well, I love the Merlin Bird app. Have you used that?
Yes, yeah.
So I've used that to try to narrow it down, and usually that seems to err on the side of sparrows. So
okay. I'll have a look and
you look skeptical.
No, it's not that.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm sure it's right. You're the one
Okay.
that's seen them, but I'm hoping that you've got some additional birds that you may have seen out there, and I'll send you a couple of examples.
Okay, yeah.
You can say, oh yeah,
We'll narrow it down.
There
are probably people listening right now, like screaming at the radio. I know what this is.
Yes. Well, yeah. So I was thinking, there's potentially sort of house or purple finches, so they've got red on them, but they would also have red on their heads.
Okay.
And they are sparrow-looking birds. But with the red. The the goldfinches that I mentioned, they're much more yellow. So if you'd said yellow, then I would have been thinking that.
No yellow for sure. Though we did have a canary, this poor, clearly domestic canary flying around a few days ago. I tried so hard to get her inside, but I was not successful.
Well, hopefully someone else did, and it wasn't a hawk or something.
Yeah. Fingers crossed.
Yes. I love the sort of Sherlock Holmesian aspect of trying to detect what
Totally.
bird is it.
Yeah, well, our mutual friend Kevin Ferguson, he gave birding the best description I've ever heard. He said, it's like Pokemon Go, but it's real life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. That's perfect. That really is. So have you had any bird watching fails?
Well, I feel like not knowing what species visits me every single day out on my balcony is probably a fail.
It is tough to work them out sometimes, though. There are key things to look for, so we can go through that. That's fine. I had a bird watching fail this morning.
Oh, okay.
Let me share that with you. I had intended to go to Descano Gardens this morning.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'd been recommended it highly, and that it would be a brilliant place to go for some birding.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
So two things that I did wrong. I messed up the sat-nav to take me there, and it started driving me here rather than there.
No.
So I was just stuck on a freeway going to Los Angeles.
Oh, no.
And I got off and fortuitously started driving back and saw a sign straight away for Descano Gardens, which was amazing. So I got there and then realised I only had 40 minutes until I had to be back to get the lift to come here.
Oh, no.
So I just walked around the car park.
Oh, okay.
Which was interesting. I still saw some birds and I saw a few mammals. But I understand they're beautiful gardens.
They are. One day you'll see them and you'll be like,
so
wow.
I have to come back. Yeah, so...
that's basically my hometown. That's in La Cañada, and next door is La Crescenta, which is where I grew up. So
right.
I went to Descanso Gardens all the time.
Oh, now I feel even worse that I didn't get a chance to see them.
You will.
One day. Are there any other pigeons or doves that you see around in the city?
Yeah, well, every once in a while I will see a group of the, standard pigeon, and then one or two who, are the black sheep of the group. And yeah, I guess like some of them are pied. I'm looking at my Sibley guide to even know these words. Some of them are pied, and they'll often just be hanging out with standard white doves. So I don't think they see each other as any different because they seem to group together, at least here in Hollywood.
Because I'm just thinking that doves often are used, that they are also a show bird, aren't they? So people have them to display or to show. Mm-hmm. And some of the more highly coloured pigeons may also be that, or so maybe escapees.
Yeah.
But do you have people having racing pigeons in the US?
Yes. Yeah. Not a fan myself because it can be a bit of a blood sport. But yeah, no, there's definitely pigeon breeders and pigeon racers and pigeon showers here. And there's actually a group in LA that meets to talk about how much they love pigeons. And at first I thought, I gotta go. And then I started reading up about it and I was like, pigeons are more sort of commodities to them, you know, a little more like the dog show circuit or something instead of a rescue. And so, yeah, then I said, I've got to find my people elsewhere.
Yeah.
Looking at this, I feel like ringed turtle dove might be what I see around.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so they're white, and this looks right. White with like it's as if she's got a little wrap, like she's going to the theater.
The other thing that I've seen while I've been here have been mourning doves.
Yes, I see those every once in a while. Yeah.
And they have a really distinctive call, very plaintive, and that's obviously where their name has come from.
They've come to our balcony maybe 5 times that I've seen.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, so they do sometimes
show up.
come.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
They're very beautiful. What I really want to see, though, is the all brown dove, which is like very scarce.
Oh, right.
Yeah. They're brownish reddish with at least in this guide, this one has a white tail. I don't know. I think they
very
look so
attractive.
Pretty. Yeah.
Oh, well, I wish you luck on that search.
Thank you. Yeah, it even says in here, scarce. So we'll see what happens.
I think it's probably the colourway, isn't it? It's quite an unusual colour. Generally, they seem to be the greys and the, greys and blacks and whites, really.
But, if that's what all the pigeons looked like, everyone would be like, look at that ugly pigeon.
Absolutely.
Because it's
uniqueness.
Scarcity.
Absolutely.
That's it.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you would like to tell me about pigeons that I haven't asked?
Well, this isn't about pigeons, but about birds. One thing I was thinking about this morning when I knew you were coming over was, do you know the story about Lucille Ball and birds?
No.
Okay. So when I was a kid, I was obsessed with Lucille Ball. Still love her, but I was really into her when I was a kid. And so I read everything I could get my hands on about her life. And her father died when she was quite young. And when she found out, I guess she was looking out the window and heard her mom say, oh my God, he's gone, or something like that, just as a bird landed on the ledge. And from then on, she associated birds with her father dying, and so she wouldn't let there be birds anywhere on the I Love Lucy set. So if people tried to put even just like a print of a bird somewhere on the set, she would like flip out and make them take it down.
Oh, gosh.
I know, isn't that sad?
It really is, yeah.
I'm sorry to give you a sad story to end this.
That's okay. Let's think of something fun to finish on. No, but that's a really interesting sort of Hollywood story. I'd never heard that, And how sad that can be so traumatic for her. What I thought you were going to say was that she saw a bird fly off as they'd said that, and then she associated
it's a spirit or something.
Yeah, because a lot of people do feel that birds have that because they fly so high, and that there's that mystical element of birds.
And so many people get tattoos of phoenixes, which I know are not real birds, but the idea of, flying out of the ashes and so on is
absolutely.
Yeah.
And the sort of doves of peace as well. The sort of doves have a very religious or spiritual feeling, and there's something about those pure white birds flying that sort of seem to tap into something. But,
those white pigeons.
Those white pigeons.
That's what I'm rebranding them as.
That's a really good point. Yes, it's just the colour, isn't it? I think you're right. It's just the colour. And in fact, people should look at our feral pigeons in a new light. Yeah. I know it's scary when there's a lot of birds together. It's the same for any big group of birds. Sometimes they can be aggressive, gulls, geese. But
roosters.
Yes. But pigeons are generally not aggressive. They're just, as I said earlier, enthusiastic. They all want a piece of the food that's available.
Totally. They're friendly.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for giving us your insight into the
my
pigeons
pleasure.
that visit your balcony, and letting us think a little bit more about the pigeons that we see in the city centres.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Thank you so much,
Pigeon rights
Carrie.
for all.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Carrie. During the interview, Carrie mentioned that she had some small birds visiting her balcony, but she wasn't sure whether they were sparrows or finches. She had seen some red on the heads, and that made me think they might have been house finches. We checked with our mutual friend Kevin Ferguson, who is a birder himself, and he confirmed that it's very likely house finches that have been visiting her balcony. I recorded this interview a few weeks ago, and since then I've received an update from Carrie, and she says, Bucket, the baby pigeon, has fledged. She barely leaves the balcony though because she's learned that pretty much everything she needs is there. But she has a healthy fear of humans and chihuahuas, so she does fly to a neighbouring rooftop when Ella and I go out to water. She's still smaller than the others, but barely, and she's very pretty, all grey with just a bare hint of turquoise near the neck. Thank you so much for that update, Carrie, and it was really lovely speaking with you. I recently asked on Twitter and Facebook for your tales regarding feral pigeons. There were a lot of responses. NL from Australia said, generally dislike them for being an introduced and feral species in Australia and New Zealand. Also, every now and then I spot what I think is an interesting looking dove, only to be disappointed when I realise it's just some escaped domestic pigeon. However, hard not to admire the rock doves when I've seen them on the cold windswept cliffs, facing gales coming off the Pacific Ocean, and living in company with cormorants, albatross and seagulls. Remarkable that they can thrive there and also in the middle of busy cities. Many common birds get labelled as pests when really they're just very adaptable and able to make a living in large urban environments. Mort from Houston said, I used to try to catch pigeons all the time. I never did, but I did get close enough to touch them. The ones that live in a park near my house are super chubby and adorable. A lot of people in Texas think they're ugly, but the iridescent feathers on their necks are beautiful. As an example of how feral pigeons are found everywhere, Esther from Chicago posted a photo in the Facebook group of one that she saw recently in Tokyo. She also said, I love them. They're super chill and in Chicago very bold and assertive. For many kids, pigeons were their first contact with birds because you're only a few crumbs away from a close encounter. Gina echoed Carrie's comments about Venice. In St Mark's Square in Venice, pigeons are very tame. You can pick them up, they climb up onto people's hands for food, etc. And they're quite adaptive to people when they know there's food involved. Pat from New York told me, I was walking down the street and a man threw a bunch of breadcrumbs into the street. One pigeon flew down first. By the time I realised I was in their path, an additional 20 flew down and one bounced right off my head. Hope it didn't hurt you, Pat. And Madeline from Vancouver wrote, I've just finished up a 4-month internship at a wildlife rescue organisation, so I've had the privilege to really get to know all sorts of different birds. I was surprised by how much I ended up loving the birds that are more common or even considered pests in the area. Pigeons are absolutely wonderful patients. They've truly evolved to be city birds, so they tend to be more wary of people rather than afraid of people like a lot of other bird species are. I love the way they move their heads to really look around the room and get used to everything. Baby pigeons are dusty little dinosaurs, and they love to squeak at you and nibble your fingers when they want food. Pigeons' wings make a weird squeaky noise when they fly, and the pigeons in their hatch ear have tiny brown feathers that look like hairs randomly sticking up in some places. They're super cute. Well, thank you very much to everyone who wrote in about pigeons. It was really great to read all the different stories you had. And I'd love to know what birds you've seen this week. Join our Facebook group to discuss this week's episode, or post your photos of the birds you've seen. I really do enjoy hearing your tales, so come and join the conversation there. Find us at facebook.com/groups/casualbirderpodcast. Follow me on Twitter at casualbirderpod or on Instagram at casualbirderpodcast. You can email me at casualbirderpod@gmail.com. If you enjoy the show, please consider leaving a review in Apple Podcasts and share the show with your friends and followers on Facebook and Twitter. Thank you to Randy Braun for designing the artwork for the show. The theme music is Short Sleeve Shirt by The Drones. Thanks to them for letting me use it. And check out their website at www.dronesmusic.net. Thank you all for listening, and I hope you'll join me again for another episode of the Casual Birder podcast.